a gente. Então, o meu microfone estava mutado. Eu vou ter de ir a um sítio e já volto. Eu acho que vou ser rápido. Voltei, gente. Pronto, bora lá.
Threaten that use of nuclear weapons short of the US actually intervening or any other NATO nation intervening directly in Ukraine and trying to sow some doubt over whether the supply of weaponry, the moving of forces to the eastern flank of NATO to reinforce it, even the economic sanctions, whether that might be termed by the Kremlin eventually as being provocative enough to use the full weight of its capabilities by way of response. So I think that's what he's trying to do here, is really sow some doubt among those NATO allies as to exactly what position he might take over this nuclear arsenal that he has.
Yeah, I mean, he's connecting it to the sanctions, isn't he? But you think there might be a connection to his, what seems to be a kind of frustrated invasion at the moment?
Well, I think he's very worried about the degree to which the invasion has actually brought together NATO. He made all sorts of demands of NATO prior to this invasion, suggesting that the US should withdraw many of its forces from Europe, if not all of them, and that those NATO countries in the eastern part of Europe were once satellite countries of the Soviet Union, or indeed were part of the Soviet Union, that they should all withdraw from NATO. Of course, what's happened is completely the opposite of that. There seems to be a much greater degree of unity within NATO now, a movement of forces towards that eastern flank to reinforce it against any possible future action by Russia. And so this is sort of, I think really Putin just signalling that, a reminder to those in the West that if there was a confrontation, that it could end up in a much wider war, much more difficult conflict that could ultimately turn nuclear. And of course that's therefore reasserting the point that nuclear deterrence is really at the centre of why the US and other allies are not intervening, as I say, directly.
Tá, bora lá, então aqui só tem uma sniper. Não.
And even those outside of NATO sending further military aid to Ukraine. This is something that is obviously contrary to the sort of interests of Russia.
Não, mata. Matei, let's go. O que é que tem aqui? Nada demais.
This threat of upping the alert level of the nuclear forces. It's not saying I'm about to use them.
Oh mano, eu vi ali uns minis ali em cima.
If that kind of intervention that isn't direct but is indirect through the supply of weaponry, that might then force Russia's hand into seeing those as potential acts of war and then creating a wider conflict with the West. And of course both sides, you'd like to think, would like to avoid that because the costs that would be involved in that would be absolutely catastrophic.
Dá para construir lá.
Yeah, and how do you think the West should react to
Pô, como é que não tem aqui bala nenhuma?
Well, I mean, the United States has already said that this is a really unnecessary step. It's an escalatory step that's being taken by Putin by making this order and verbalizing these threats in this way. The United States could increase its own alert levels. But
I know, you esta bala.
So far, at least, are that won't be happening. They feel that they've got, even at a low level of alerts, with a sufficient amount of their nuclear force is ready to go, as it were, and that should provide sufficient deterrence against any Russian threats on the nuclear front, and also in terms of conventional force. That they should understand that they cannot attack a NATO country because the Article 5 collective defence would be brought into being, and then that could put Russia at war with the West.
No, man.
To have happened. But one of the consequences that we might see is that the Biden administration, which was very keen actually on trying to increase its arms control discussions with Russia and try and minimise the threats of the use of nuclear weapons.
We've run out of time. Listen, thank you.
Eu voltei, gente. Bora lá. Ok, tudo travado, mas pronto, bora lá. Olha, default fake. Bora lá. Olha, entrou o Nate do... Ai, como é que se chama o filme? Espera aí. Do Uncharted. O Drake do Uncharted. Bora. Pronto. Meu Deus. Finalmente. O que é que o gajo está aqui a fazer? Ok, nice. Nice, estourei. Mas... Prendi. Ah, mano, depois eu quase queria fazer teams. Mano, como é que o gajo ainda estava imune? Dispara! Não, mano, é sério. É sério. Meu Deus. Ah, não, mano.
Russian forces fighting on the streets of Ukraine and now on high alert for a nuclear threat as President Putin raises the stakes.
I ordered the Minister of Defense and the Chief of General Staff.
Finalmente. Também jogo boa de mouse. Oh, mano, olha para isto. Também já comecei agora a jogar, mas pronto.
The EU pledges to buy and deliver more weapons to Ukraine as the US also moves to increase military aid. BP offloads its stake in the Russian oil giant.
Ah, mano.
Its chief executive resigns from the firm's board with immediate effect.
Não.
Human tide escaping Ukraine, more than 350,000 refugees.
Ai, ai, se o gajo acertar.
Also in Russia,
estourado.
protesters gather in Moscow and St. Petersburg.
Mano!
Good evening. 4 days into Russia's invasion,
Sou horrível
Ukraine,
neste jogo.
President Putin's forces have not yet taken any major city. And apparently United West has agreed a catalogue of sanctions, including barring some Russian banks from a key banking system. So this afternoon, Russia's leader upped the stakes, ordering his nuclear forces onto high alert. Vladimir Putin says it was because the sanctions are illegitimate and NATO leaders have made aggressive statements. These are the key developments so far today. Vladimir Putin's decision was described as dangerous and irresponsible by the head of NATO. Elsewhere, President Volodymyr Zelensky's office says it is sending a delegation to negotiate with Russian officials on Ukraine's Belarusian border. The international backlash continues, with the EU announcing this evening that it will send weapons to Ukraine, shut its airspace to Russian planes, and ban Russian state-owned media from broadcasting. And in the last hour, BP has announced
Mano, isto não está a editar. Olha para isto.
oil company Rosneft
Ah, não,
following
mano.
pressure from the UK government. And we'll have more on that in just
Ah,
a moment.
sabia.
But first this evening, our Moscow correspondent Diana Magne reports on President Putin.
Ah, não, Zé.
Last Saturday, Vladimir Putin held nuclear drills for all the world.
Ah, não, o gajo roubou-me aquilo.
He put them on high alert.
Dear colleagues, you can see that Western countries are not only taking unfriendly economic actions against our country, I mean the illegal sanctions
Não.
knows about, but also the top officials of leading NATO countries
Mano, eu sou horrível.
aggressive statements with regards to our country. That's why I'm ordering the Defence Minister and the Chief of General Staff to put deterrence forces in high combat alert.
Even his defense minister looks concerned.
He's put his nuclear forces on high alert. What does that mean, and how worried should we be?
Alerting could mean an increase in general force readiness. It could mean forces from Russia's Baltic Numu, which are in charge of their arsenal, pulling nuclear warheads out of central storage, to bring them to places where means of delivery are stored, things like strategic bombers, part of Russia's long-range aviation. It could mean a higher alert level of Russia's strategic bomber force. It could mean more strategic ballistic missile submarines being put out to sea.
Eu estou horrível
Or it
hoje.
could be a larger number of strategic bomber patrols, or things sort of over signaling a bad nation.
Russian troops have pushed into Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. But there
Porra,
does
Zé.
not appear to be the slam dunk straight to Kiev invasion that they'd hoped for. But they have deployed just a fraction of the military power they have on standby, so that could all change. Sky News has confirmed the presence of thermobaric rockets in southern Ukraine.
Finalmente, alguma jogada boa e
bonita.
bonita.
Which sucks in oxygen to create
Ok, tá bem, já percebi, não precisa de ser amassado.
videos like this of the Ukrainian soldiers swearing they'll never speak Russian again once this war is done. Testament to the fact that Ukraine's military will not go down without a fight. Ukraine agreed today to send a delegation for talks with the Russians at a site near Chernobyl on the border between Ukraine and Belarus, but they remained defiant.
The order
Hesita!
to put on high alert his nuclear weapons is a direct threat to use these nuclear weapons against Ukraine, then I have a very simple message. It will be a catastrophe for the world, but it will not break us down.
In Russia, protesters again took to the streets across the country.
Correct?
Those who see through the propaganda and know this war is wrong, but who aren't deterred by the inevitable arrests. Nuclear forces on high alert, Ukraine cities under attack, and this kind of a crackdown back home. It is a hard sell even to his own people that this is all in the name of Russia's defense.
Ah, não.
No one
Nice.
president is doing this, and the West
Correct.
doesn't either, which makes planning a response to what is now a nuclear threat that much harder. Sky News, Moscow.
Well, this is the situation on the ground in Ukraine as we understand it. Over the past 24 hours, there have been reports of heavy fighting right across the country. Ukrainian officials say Russian troops entered Kharkiv, the country's second largest city. Officials also said they destroyed a tank company in Kryla and reported fighting on the outskirts of the capital, Kiev, and in Sumy and in Mykolaiv and in Odessa. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry claim they have completely blocked the strategic ports of Kherson and Berdyansk. And in Kharkiv, Ukrainian local officials say street fighting broke out in multiple areas of the city this morning, but the troops were repelled and that the Ukrainians remain in control this evening. Meanwhile, in Kiev, a curfew is in place until
Tenho!
earliest.
Não sei!
Reported an explosion at Giuliani Airport, southwest of here.
Pode ser!
The night sky after an oil depot near an air base in Vasilkiev was bombed overnight.
Mano, sério.
Fighting.
Dança, dança!
Ukrainians have agreed to meet with the Russian delegation.
Mano!
Conditions, they say. Groups will meet at an undisclosed location on the Ukrainian-Belarusian border.
Porra, Zé!
Azov River. And as you've been hearing, a Ukrainian city of nearly 1.5 million people is the focus of the fighting in the country today. Kyiv is close to the Russian border in the east of Ukraine. The city's governor said earlier that government forces are still fully controlling that.
Porra!
One of John Sparks reports on the battle for Kharkiv.
Mano, não dá pra jogar.
It was an ominous sight, but it wasn't entirely unexpected. Elite Russian soldiers
Olha que lixo agora. Vou mesmo para aquele jump.
The Russian border is only 20 miles away. But the people who live here do not want an occupying force. In a series of videos verified by Sky News, we see soldiers who we believe to be Ukrainian.
Lança granadas.
Engage an enemy column with machine guns and rocket-propelled
Mas
grenades.
não tem aqui a coisa.
This
Não
is
tem aqui
intense
grudantes.
close combat. Is everyone okay? Shouts one man.
Bora.
Then we see a column of badly damaged vehicles being searched by Ukrainian troops.
Mano, eu sou horrível.
Russian markers, and they have been peppered with bullets. The occupants are nowhere to be seen. A pretty intense day today. We spoke to a local resident who took shelter as the battle raged.
Não, mano.
People from
Que sai!
districts of the city, they saw the groups of 3-4 vehicles and some people. We have quite strong defense here in the city, and we have the special troops who can